Thank you.
Well, Willow, I am so excited for you to get to know Mitch Albom. Many of you have read Tuesdays with Morrie, which is just a fantastic book. It's amazing. And this year marks the 20-year anniversary. Why do you feel like this book, it's the all-time best-selling memoir ever, still seems to resonate with humanity?
Well, I don't know. All I can say was sort of an accident, a happy accident. You know, for people who don't know the story quickly, Morrie was an old professor of mine in college. I was very close with him, really close, and then I lost touch with him, chasing my own ambitions and my own dreams. And 16 years went by without a phone call, and then one night I happened to see him on Nightline talking to Ted Koppel about what it was like to die from Lou Gehrig's disease, and it was only through that I found out he was dying. I called him up. One call led to a visit. One visit led to another visit, another visit. I ended up going every Tuesday that he had left in his life to try to get the answer, and I think this is the answer to your question. What do we know when we're dying that puts everything into perspective? And wouldn't it be great to have that perspective now when we're young enough and healthy enough to do something about it? And Morrie would always say to me, you know, when you get to where I am, and you will get to where I am, you know, and then we would talk about things. And so I think everybody has that curiosity about the clarity that comes at the end of life. And I think everybody has had a teacher, and I think everybody, to be honest, has felt a little lost in their life like I did during that time. Maybe that's why it's reached so many people. It was certainly an accident. I didn't write it to be a bestseller. I wrote it to pay his medical bills, and they printed 20,000 copies. We took all the money, paid his bills, and I was ready to go back to the locker room, and I thought I'd have them in the trunk of my car for the rest of my life, you know, giving them out at Christmas time to everybody. So it's been a surprise.
I love this picture of Morrie, and just, he seemed, when I read it, larger than life. Yeah. And yet, as you reconnected with Morrie, who you referred to as Coach, yeah. You found something on those Tuesday mornings. When you'd go visit him, you'd sit by him at his bedside, but as you'd wait, you saw people kind of leaving his presence crying, and you began to realize that they had a different perspective entering in. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was interesting because other people would come, obviously, to visit him too, and they would always prepare, like, okay, I'm going to cheer him up, because people are nervous around dying people. They don't know what to say. I'm going to cheer him up. I'm going to make him happy. They'd go into the room, the door would close, and they'd come out an hour later in tears. But they'd be crying about their divorce, their love life, their job, and they'd say, I don't know what happened. I went in to try to cheer him up, but after 5 minutes, he started asking me about my life, and then I started telling him, and then he asked me more, and I started telling him more. Next thing I know, I'm crying. I went in to cheer him, but he ended up cheering me, and I said to him one day, I don't get it. You've hit the mother lode of sympathy here. You know, why don't you just take advantage of it, let people cheer you up? And he said, Mitch, why would I ever take from people like that? Taking just makes me feel more like I'm dying. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. It is a profound little sentence. It also rhymes, so it's easy to remember. It helps. And I've found that to be true in my life.
Yeah. Well, you know, this statement, when Morrie said that to you, became quite anthemic. Yeah. And as you've gone on and really carried the legacy of Morrie well, it led you to start 9 charities in the city you call home today, Detroit. Yeah. Let's talk about maybe your heart for the city and heart for homelessness, and maybe one of those charities that you've founded.
Well, I really do believe that giving is living. Having, you know, if anyone's had the opportunity to earn or make some money or whatever, you find out very quickly that, okay, you're excited and then it passes. But when you get a chance to do something for somebody else, it stays with you. I spent one night at a homeless shelter in Detroit to write about what the experience was like during the Super Bowl in 2006. And while I was online, I got the soap, I got the towel, I have a blanket, and I got my bed, and I'm waiting for dinner, and this guy in front of me turns around, he looks me up and down, he says, "Aren't you Mitch Albom?" And I said, "Yeah." And he looked me up and down again, he said, "So what happened to you?" You know? And yeah, I laughed a little bit too, and then decided I needed to change my wardrobe, clearly, but that was a real aha moment for me in its way, because I'm sure he never expected to be on that line. It was a perfectly legitimate question. And we're all just one bad thing away from being on that line. In our city, in Detroit, where we had 25% unemployment during the bad recession, a lot of people who used to serve at soup kitchens were online at soup kitchen.
Yeah.
So that led me to think, well, okay, I ought to be doing more. And I started one charity, which led to another, which led to another, and now there are 9 of them.
Well, I want to talk about one of them that you began called A Hole in the Roof. And it started from this large Episcopalian church that was built in the 1800s. And
that was the roof.
That was the roof that that water and snow was coming in. But it had now become a church that was led by Pastor Henry Covington. The church was named I Am My Brother's Keeper.
Right.
And you two kind of started this relationship, and that relationship became the essence of the book, Have a Little Faith. Talk about that.
Well, Henry was like the last guy to come to faith. He was an ex-con, a drug addict. The first 20-something years of his life, you never would have thought of God. And one night when he thought he was going to be murdered by his drug dealers, and he was hiding behind trash cans with a shotgun, he looked up and he said, "Okay, Jesus, you get me out of this. You can have me in the morning." And sounded like a fair deal at the time. And for whatever reason, they didn't come. And he woke up that next morning, and he literally went cold turkey and turned his life around, and began to preach and pastor, and then eventually was sent to Detroit to find a church. Well, the only church he could find was this 150-year-old church that had been once magnificent, now so decayed that there was a hole in the roof. Snow used to come in on the congregants, and he preached to the homeless. Homeless people used to sleep on the floor of that church all the time, and then when they had their services, snow used to actually come in on top of them. They had to build a little plasticine tent where they sat shivering and thanking God. And I thought, if you can thank God while the snow is coming down, that's real faith. Yeah. And I really admired him, and I ended up writing a book about it.
And you gathered some people who, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who donated, and you put on this event called Shingle Bells, which I just loved it, where you kind of went up on the roof, kind of began working to cover that hole and actually fix and rebuild that church so that Pastor Henry could just continue to lead.
Which we ultimately did, People gave money from around the world, and ultimately when we fixed the patch and everyone was on the ladders, handing the shingles up to the ladders and things like that. And in the church today, if you go there today and you look up into the roof, exactly where that massive hole was is a plaque exactly the size of the hole, with the names of every single person from around the world who gave even 50 cents to help patch that up, because Henry and I said, well, when you look up in the church, you ought to see something inspirational, right? I mean, that's the whole idea, right? And what could be more inspirational than seeing how people come together who don't even know you to help fix your place of worship so that you can pray.
That's beautiful. Now, again, that theme, giving is living, actually took you to Haiti. And after the devastation of the earthquake in January 2010, you got connected with a pastor in Detroit who was running an orphanage and invited you to get down there. Talk about that.
It wasn't as much of an invitation as a plea, because right after the earthquake, he thought his orphanage had been destroyed, and he couldn't get in touch with it. He thought all the kids had been killed. I helped arrange for a little plane to go down there, and we flew down literally 2 weeks after the earthquake, but when nobody was going into Haiti except government officials. And we landed, and I'll never forget what I saw. I mean, the plane just landed. We just got off the plane and walked. And the devastation of the earthquake, you smelled death in the air. You saw dead bodies. You saw people walking around in dazes, covered in soot and the ashes from the crumbling buildings. And when we got to the orphanage, it hadn't been destroyed. A building across the street had, but it was overrun with just hundreds of people living there because they thought, well, maybe they'll send food here. And while I was standing there, I remember I was just looking around, dazed and gazing, and my hands were by my side, and all of a sudden I felt 2 little hands in each of my hands, and I looked down, and there were children holding my hands who I hadn't even met yet. And I think probably from that moment forward, I was kind of hooked. But then at night, they would pray amidst all this rubble. The kids would get together, and they still do this to this day, and they would pray with no books, with no sheets. They would just call out a song, and they would sing it for 45 minutes at the top of their lungs. And I'm thinking, these are kids who don't have, they literally are using holes to go to the bathroom. They don't have a shower. They've never had a shower. They don't have a kitchen. They eat 1 cup of rice a day. and look how grateful they are for their lives. So I got more involved. I brought down a lot of people from Detroit, started coming all the time. We built the first kitchen, the first toilets, the first showers. We built a school. And after a few months, the pastor there, who was 84, admitted to me that he didn't have any money to run the place. And so I said, well, how hard could it be to run an orphanage? Another sentence in my life that I came to regret. And I took it over, and I've been running it ever since. I go to Haiti every single month. I've been there every month since January of 2010. I stay for 3 or 4 days, and we built it back up. There's we have 47 kids now. We have a school, and they're the light of our lives, and they're remarkable children, remarkable children. Many of them have been left to die. Some of them we've had to invent their names because there's no birth certificates. But they have a joy for living and a joy and a gratefulness to God that is unparalleled in any place I've ever seen.
Wow. You go back to Maury, and Maury once told you, don't just write checks. Mm-hmm. And what I love so much about your story is how you have not just been someone who's written a check, but you've rolled up your sleeves and become like the director of an orphanage. What do you think Maury would say to you today?
Do more. I mean, it's some is enough, but do more. Giving is living. You got to be part of your communities, even if it breaks your heart. And sometimes, as you and I know, we've talked. There are things that happen, even with children, that will break your heart, and you have to keep going forward, and you have to keep pushing to help and think of people. And it takes your mind off of your own problems, because how bad could you have it if there's a child in front of you who's starving or doesn't have a place to sleep?
Yeah, well, let's talk about one of those trips down when a little girl captured your heart.
Yeah.
Talk about Chica.
Well, this was probably the most personal of all the things that have happened to me in my life. Chica was a little girl who came to us whose mother died giving birth to her baby brother when she was 2.5. In Haiti, nobody goes to a hospital, and so she was giving birth at home in a little hut, as you could imagine, and she lost so much blood, and they had a midwife there who didn't know what he was doing, and she died. Didn't need to die, but she did, and that was the last time that Chica was with her family. Her godmother took care of her for about 9 months, and then brought her to us and said, can you take care of her? For about 2.5 years, she lived with us. She was just one of 40-some-odd kids. Kind of brash, kind of funny, a little annoying sometimes. It was always chica pagumen, which means don't fight, stop fighting. And then one day I got a call that they said, there's something the matter with Chica's face. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, her face is dropping. I said, did you take her to the doctor? Yes. Well, what did the doctor do? He gave her eye drops. I said, okay, it's not eye drops. Whatever it is neurological. We ended up, they have one MRI machine in all of Haiti. You have to bring $750 cash, which we did. Got a picture taken, and the prognosis was whatever is in her brain, there's something in her brain, some kind of tumor, and whatever it is, there's nobody in Haiti that can take care of it. So we brought her up to America through pulling a lot of strings, thinking, well, maybe we'll get it operated on, take it out, she can resume her life in Haiti. And she never went home. That was in 2015. Turns out it was something called DIPG, which is an aggressive cancerous brain tumor that cannot be stopped. The doctors told us she has maybe 5 months left to live. Why don't you take her back home and just let her play out, and one day she'll just sort of expire. And I said, I can't do that because she's a fighter, pagumen. Yeah. She's a fighter, and if she's gonna fight, we're gonna fight. And that began a 2-year journey with Chica, where she basically became our daughter. That's my wife, Janine. And we traveled all over the world, New York, Germany. We tried every kind of experimental medication that we could. But while we were doing that, we were given the greatest gift that you could possibly be given. We were given a daughter. And she was given a life, and she was given parents, 2 parents. And there was nothing like it. And
you mentioned to me that your wife walked into the bedroom with a phone, and she was sitting and she was just singing a song that we sang earlier this morning, a Bethel song. Talk about that.
Well, Chica was always, she was brash and funny, and when she couldn't walk anymore, I had to carry her everywhere. And one time I said to her when we were coloring, I said, oh, Chica, I got to go to my job. And she said, no, you don't. Your job is carrying me, And of course, she was right. My job was to carry her, but that's what she was. She would burst into song on a regular basis. So it wasn't a surprise to hear her singing, but all of a sudden, one day, my wife heard her singing by herself in the bedroom. And so she walked in with an iPhone, and my wife's not very technically oriented. I'm amazed she got it to work. And normally, when you walk in on a child singing, what does a child do? They stop. You know, they always stop. They're a little embarrassed. She was singing I Am a Child of God, the Bethel song, and it's one of the songs that the kids sing in Haiti every night. And she sang for 8.5 minutes, uninterrupted, despite the fact that my wife was right there. It was like she was looking through us straight to God. I honestly believe in that moment she was talking to God. And to this day, whenever I listen to it, I'm moved beyond belief.
Let's watch this.
When your mother's wrong, you have to learn me, because my fears were gone. I'm in one again into your family, because my fears were gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
That's what's on her tombstone, by the way, in Haiti, where we brought her back to be buried when she finally passed away after almost 2 years. I am a child of God in Creole and in English.
I know for many of us in this room, maybe there is someone in our life that has passed, or maybe there is someone in our life who is sick. You've made it a choice, a deliberate choice to go visit Maury. You and your wife made that deliberate choice to invite Chika in. What words would you speak to us about how to engage? Because I think you're right. I think a lot of people start to kind of, I got to be really happy, I got to cheer. Like, what would you say to us for those in our lives that are sick?
Well, having sat alongside an old man when he was dying, having been in bed with a little girl when she died, I can tell you that the tendency is to run away from loss. You don't want to see it. You don't want to be exposed to it. I think we should be doing exactly the opposite. When Maury said, you know, isn't it funny that when a leaf dies, just before it dies, it gets its most colorful? Yellows and beautiful oranges, and then it falls off the tree. He said, maybe human beings are like that too, and I believe that that's true. I think when people are close to the end, they have things to say and share, and they need our love and touch. Maury would say, you know, when you're a baby, you come into the world, what's one thing you need? You need to be held and caressed and comforted. Well, I'll let you in on a secret. When you leave the world, that's exactly what you need too. And with Chika, we were in bed with her literally in her final moments, holding her and caressing her. And I think we need to actually run towards loss. We need to spend more time with the people who are sick, talk to them. They're getting closer to God. And through our associations with them and visits with them and time spent, we actually get closer to God as well. We realize their mortality, we understand our own mortality. And I always believe if you really understand your own mortality, if you have a little bird on your shoulder that Maury used to say, check with it every day, is today the day I die? Is today the day I die? And be prepared for the one day that that bird says, today's the day. Then you'll be closer to God because you were always prepared for it. So even though the tendency is to run from loss, I think we need to run to it, embrace it, and let the people who are about to go be with God know how we feel about them at those moments.
Mitch, you have inspired me. Your writings have just been such a blessing to me. Friends, I want you to know what self-control is. He's one of the foremost writers about the University of Michigan. I didn't ask him one question about it. But I will say, as a sports writer, you've always found the humanity, as you have really taken that mantra, giving is living, and really lived it out. Thank you. And if you want to learn more about, you can go to mitchalbom.com, mitchalbomcharities.org. He's going to do a book signing after this service, and you'll be able to shake his hand and get a book and get it signed. But Willow Creek, can we thank Mitch Albom?
Thank you.